All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Coleman Power Organic Fitness Podcast. I have my latest guest here in front of me, Chris Pidge, one of the founding members of Farm to Fork Life and the Farmer's Digest. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey Coleman, happy to be here. Really excited that you're having me on.
Well, I suppose I brought you on as someone that's in the field, pardon the pun. Yes, I said it. All right. The idea is, all right, in regenerative agriculture based over in the US. So international guest here today. Yes. And the idea is, I just want you actually even to simply even tell the listeners and the viewers of this podcast, like, what is regenerative farming? What's the whole story? Is it this new buzzword or what? What is about it?
Yeah, so a lot of people have put regenerative farming and sustainable agriculture as kind of the same thing. The whole idea behind regenerative farming is healing the land, regenerating the land, fixing soil quality, water infiltration rates, and kind of leaving the land better than we found it, so to speak.
Yeah, love it. And that's it, I suppose, in a nutshell, right? What I suppose was something that got you started in the whole regenerative farming practices that you're currently doing right now?
For sure. So I kind of have a weird story. I came from an athletic background. I was playing what they call junior hockey over here in America. Um, and I was living in Bozeman, Montana in a hotel playing hockey all day, every day for the Ice Dogs. And I heard a guy named Will Harris speak on a podcast, actually. And Will is a fourth generational farmer in South Georgia. And he took his farm from just supporting himself and his family to having like 180 employees, all this land, all because of regenerative agriculture. And everything just switched for me like that. I started reading every book I could get my hands on. Joel Salatin, Gabe Brown, all these guys, became obsessed with it. And I actually went and worked for Will Harris at White Oak Pastures as an intern in South Georgia and kind of learned what he was doing. So that's kind of how I got started. Completely changed everything about my life. Ended up going to school to study agriculture and just focus on regenerative farming and getting back to the family farm and farming that way.
Yeah. And what kind of farm are you currently looking after, or as a part of the role that you're currently doing now, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm looking at going back to the family farm in southeastern Ohio, and that's primarily livestock because it's very hilly there. It's like the Appalachia region, and I want to do cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, all direct to consumer, all pasture based. You could say organic. I would say beyond organic. Joel Salatin type farm, so to speak. So selling to the local community.
Yeah. Is that a highly populated town in itself? And is the farm set up for, I'm going to say, on-site visits? Is there a shop there at this minute, or what kind of setup do you have, or what's?
No, there is not a shop set up yet. And as far as population goes, I really like where we're situated. So we're about an hour and a half from Columbus, Ohio, which is a huge population, and then about 45 minutes from Athens. Both areas have huge farmer market presence. And the local food movement is growing all across the country. And it's really cool that a small farmer, when selling direct, can produce way less and still make a really good living if they can just find the market and find the consumers to buy those goods.
And just even we'll further expand on that. It's because you're cutting out that middleman. You're cutting out the shop, which literally, as a lot of people maybe they don't know, will expand on that. Like take the example of myself when I was trying to sell to local shops, and let's say I had a bag of carrots and I was trying to sell for €3 or equivalent to $3, and the shop says, "Yeah, no problem. But the idea is we want to make 150 on it, so you sell it to us for 150." And it was just crazy. So for them that product sitting on the shelf, they wanted literally to have half of the profits, 50% of that in a nutshell. But if you take that out, and if you were to sell a higher value product such as the likes of, I'm going to say, eggs, beef, and or dairy or anything else similar to that, it would literally be much higher return on value.
Yeah, I mean, if you're raising grass-fed beef or even, grain-fed finished beef, your expenses are, grain, vaccines if you need them, you know, the veterinary bills that happen, but it's not a ton, and then the processing fee, and that's it. You get the rest of the profits. If you can make that direct to consumer model work for your farm, there are real profits in it. And that's, like I was saying, Will Harris completely transformed his whole area. It was one of the lowest income areas in Georgia. And now he's giving, 180 people jobs and paying them above minimum wage in an area where there were no jobs before, all because of regenerative farming and direct to consumer sales.
And I suppose even to further expand on that regenerative farming, we're looking after those individuals they're looking after the soil, because we're only here for a short period of time. We have to look after, I want to say, these animals in a way that actually used to be the past, but now we're trying to make it to happen again in the likes of the future. We kind of get lost there in the middle, and we try to like take shortcuts, and we try to spray off land, and we try to give and dip and vaccinate and you name it, medication to things that didn't even need it as a precautionary method, which all it'll cost money. And the idea is, I love that fact also, that it's like food shouldn't be cheap, because if it is, something is missing out along the way, whether it's the soil, it's the poor individual who's picking or harvesting it, or in the process of it, and or it may be the farmer out the other side of it.
Yeah. And Coleman, I would say food is never cheap. You just don't see the cost all the time. If you're buying something in the grocery store, it might be cheaper than if you buy from a local farmer. But if you buy from a regenerative farmer, you know that soil is getting better, and that animal had a good life. And not everybody can afford that, but if you can, I mean, that's something I personally look for in a product.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's doing your best. And the idea is you would even get better value out the other side of it if you were to continue to go to that producer, because they will give you, and there's loads of opportunities for offal as well. The idea is, again, a lot of people going back to the old ways of liver and hearts and different things like that. And that's something that my mother used to actually cook my father when they first met. I only heard that recently at a dinner table, and I was there, what? So
Beef
yeah,
liver, or what? What was she making?
my mother used to stuff, I'm going to say, I couldn't swear what hearts off the top. I'm going to say sheep hearts. I'm going to say,
Okay.
yeah, they should stuff sheep hearts with the likes of bread stuffing and serve it to my father with gravy and homegrown spuds, because when they first moved into the house, that's what they had. Because the spuds, they grew for free. The potatoes, they grew for free. Do you know what I mean? It was literally the hearts that were a lower cost beef and offal being at the cheap end of something that they could get. There was a complete
Yeah.
protein that they didn't necessarily know that at the time. But also the gravy was the healthy fats. And that literally is what kept my parents, and still to this day, alive and kicking. And it's something that it's like, I'm going back to that. But they didn't tell me that story until only recently. And I suppose I love sharing these things,
Yeah.
because at the dinner table, it's where you hear the best stories.
Yeah, no, for sure. My grandma made me liver and onions one time, and it was it was good. But it's definitely a different tasting uh product and meat than people are used to, right? You're used to the juicy fat ribeye steak, or the fatty burger. Um
And
my favorite thing to do with heart and liver is I'm a big deer hunter, right? And so every time I kill a deer that day, I'm throwing the heart and the liver over some hickory logs and cooking it like that. A little bit of salt. It is just perfect.
yeah, love that in itself. Getting back to, I suppose, simple nature's foods in itself. Next thing I kind of want to unpack is the idea is, was it, I suppose, so was it a period, or something that happened to you in life where you saw, this is it now, I really want to get back to my own family farm, and I want to switch it to the likes of, I'm going to say, more organic or more regenerative in itself?
Yeah, I mean, I spent 2 years playing junior hockey. So what that looked like was sitting on a bus 2, 3 times a week, traveling multiple hours, and you really just sit there and think a lot about what's important to you and what you miss. And all this time I was thinking about the farm and my family and what I want my life to look like and the things I care about, right? And it all just came back to the farm. And once I heard Will Harris speak, it all the pieces kind of came together, because I realized, like, hey, I can make a living farming. I could support a family like this. I could make a life like this. And I would say after that Will Harris moment when I heard him speak, I think it was on Rogan or some other podcast. Um, that was the spark, and then it was just a slow trickle of just reading more and more books, more and more farmers who had done it successfully.
Yeah. What would you say was the biggest challenges for people switching over from the likes of conventional to maybe organic or regenerative methods?
Um, this is such an interesting topic, which is, I think, really multifaceted. I think one of the hardest parts is conventional farmers think it won't work for them. And on the flip side of that, I think the organic community needs to be more open to conventional farmers. We need to invite everybody in. It doesn't matter, if you're farming 5,000 acres row crops, we need to be an open door if you want to learn about organic practices. And I think that's something that throws a lot of conventional farmers off. And it's not everybody in the organic community. But sometimes organic people who are eating organic, almost come at it from a moral perspective, if that makes sense. And it really turns off conventional farmers. And I think that's a big challenge, right? If a conventional farmer hears somebody say like, well, I want my food to be organic because that's, the environmentally right way. I've never met a farmer who doesn't care about the environment, who doesn't want their land to be healthy, who doesn't want a happy family. They could be farming the way their dad taught them to farm and the way their grandpa farmed. And I think that can be one of the biggest challenges, is just changing what you've done for, maybe 2 generations.
Yeah. And would you say that then it's all down to an educational role, that either somebody has to really get them to see it firsthand? And would you see that being something that you would like to do on your farm, invite other farmers on, or the general public?
Yeah, that's actually a good segue, not to plug Farm to Fork and the Farmer's Digest, but what my company is trying to do is provide farmers with just information about these organic practices, regenerative practices, how you could implement them into your operation, and most importantly, make it cash flow. Because if you're a farmer and you're not making money, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be a farmer for very long. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I want you further, I suppose, expand and break down what the likes of, I'm going to say, the Farm to Fork life and the likes of the Farmer's Digest actually do. Maybe tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so right now we started as a direct-to-consumer platform. So we wanted to be a place where farmers could come, list their products, and consumers could see it and buy that. And we had to pivot away from that because of time constraints. And we really just focused on the newsletter and article. And the reason we pivoted was, we didn't have enough time. We both work other jobs and are busy, but there was a ton of interest. We have 1,900 people who signed up in about 8 weeks for the newsletter.
From where? Where did those people come from, actually? Just well-worth.
Man, we got people from Korea, all over America, and it's all organic. We haven't done any advertising.
How did you put it out on what platforms, as someone who's all over social media?
So my business partner is a top-notch coder, I would say. And we didn't advertise it at all. We're on Reddit, I guess. That's how we connected. But he just made this website, and it was all organic, people searching things. Because on the other side of that, we're posting these articles, right, that we've produced. And they're all about implementing sustainable practices and how you could do that. They're also about like estate planning. Like we just did a series on why a farmer needs an LLC. Why a farmer, the differences between a sole proprietorship versus an LLC versus a C Corp. And just trying to give farmers as much education as we can.
Yeah. So, and that's great, because I would be a firm believer and in educating either the general public. I work a lot with schools as well with that, and that covers a lot of the bases between the likes of, I'm going to say, the children, the teachers, and the likes of the adults, because a lot of people actually don't know. They don't know what organic is. They don't know what regenerative is. And I suppose that's our role, to literally break it down to a simple form. Literally, it's not all the same. It's not, I'm going to say, something that you can literally compared to anything else because it's completely different. And getting people to taste it, or more so getting people out to the likes of the farms, and is one of my goals has been for 2025, and now we're going to still in 2024 and into 2025 as a last year, completing that longest Malin to Mizzen cycle, and with the next one actually starting in September. We're cycling along the likes of the East Coast, so we're starting on the top right Giants Causeway, cycling all the way down and finishing in Waterford, my hometown. And we're stopping off at 7 different farms. We have a crew of 10 people in total, and from that, literally, they'll be open to the public, which is rare in itself to have a farm open to the public to sample the foods that are literally produced, not close, right on the land that the same acre that they stand on.
Yeah. I'm so jealous. That just sounds like a great experience. That you guys are going to do. Coleman, I got a question for you. What do you think, as people who are kind of in this space, proponents of sustainable ag and regenerative farming, is the number one way to get farmers to look at this through a new lens? If you're a conventional farmer, what do you say to that farmer?
That's a brilliant question. And the idea is, you don't ever want to tell anybody that they're doing something wrong, because that's not the way to do it. I'm a positive man, and I'm positive because I suppose, dealt with a lot of people, and I feel like I'm very old, over the period of time where I've really studied horticulture, I went into commercial growing myself, and it's something that, right, you have to literally get them to come out to the farms and see the different practices and show them the likes of the figures. For a farmer, that's really important, right? It's great to look after the land. And as you mentioned, and we touched on it here, there's no one that doesn't literally grow food or produce it and literally will ever say that they don't love the land. They literally love the land, they love the animals and the job and the role that they do, because it's quite unique. There's no other job where literally you have to literally work 24 hours on the clock all over the year that's out there. But the idea is literally definitely to, I suppose, show them that there is another way, and if they can incorporate it in only small bits. And again, just like that quote that we were talking about before I'm going to say press record, how do you do anything, right? How do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite. And that's a sure as hell way, I suppose, is an approach that we literally have to get into more and more people. And definitely, I suppose, education would be something that I would do in through schools. And there is sure as hell going to be some, I'm going to say, either boy or girl that comes out the other side of having a horticultural experience with myself, that sets up either a veg farm and or incorporates in the whole regenerative cycle of animals, whether it's hens or it's chickens or it's goats, or pigs or cattle in and on that, because it's what happens at the early stage of development is really, really, I suppose, key towards anyone picking whatever role they want to do for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of something that maybe is selfish to say. I want to be put into those positions in different schools or communities to literally help them people to go, Jesus, I got some buzz of that talk off Coleman. I am definitely going to set up that small market garden, or I'm going to produce honey for myself. He was mentioning all about how easy it is to set up your own hives, and that's something I could definitely do. I'm really into it. I love it, and that's what it's really important to find the people out there in this world. That's why I love social media. That's why I love podcasts, and because you can reach a much wider audience than opposed to just two of us having a phone call or sending emails, for that matter. And I love the whole fact of that.
Yeah. And creating a community. I think the education aspect in schools specifically that you touched on is huge. Like growing up here in Iowa, of all places, there was no growing of anything when I was in grade school, when I went to high school, which to me makes no sense. The schools around here have the space. Most American schools do. Maybe not, schools in the inner city might not. But I feel like most schools in America have the land that you could grow a vegetable garden. You could do something. You could educate children and, teach them where their food comes from and what good food tastes like. And, that this is a career that is viable if you know what you're doing.
And it's an absolute brilliant career. It's so self-rewarding. And as you mentioned, the schools have huge property around the grounds that has nothing but grass on it, that has to be watered anyway, that you pay groundskeeper Willie to come round with the lawnmower, as opposed to you literally educate and pay state fund, because some of those lads are state funded anyway, to do the maintenance of the grounds, cutting a tree and blah, blah, blah. Why couldn't it be apple trees? Why couldn't it literally be a couple of drills the spuds. That literally all the groundskeeper really has to do is earth up, and even if he doesn't want to earth them up, if he does it just only once, does a tiny bit of hoeing, you would have the spud sown in the early, I'm going to say, likes of the spring, and late variety of potatoes harvested in September, which the kids would do. There's the labour that you're talking about. We don't have any labour. The groundskeeper really, he's overworked. Perfect. The kids will absolutely be delighted, and they'll go back into the school. They'll take out or put it into the likes of the home economics room. They'll chop them up. They'll put some sort of spices, maybe like rosemary or pink Himalayan salt or Atlantic sea salt, and
Yeah.
they literally made their own chips or fries. Like, that couldn't be any simpler. And that is happening on a very, very small scale. But it needs to, people need to, I feel like I need to shake people. Like, oh no, it's summer holidays, you better slow down. In fact, speed up. Open up your eyes to literally how food is produced. Because where you're getting it from, lads, at the minute, isn't from where the country that you're living in. It's been shipped far, far, far beyond the likes of the gates of where you think it might be in this country, or whether it's in America or in Ireland for that matter. And we do it too. We ship in a huge percentage, I'd love to have the number, of potatoes into our country from the likes of Central Europe, and Cyprus is the one that rings up in my head.
And why?
Why, in the name of God? It's nonsensical. I nearly get a fright when I see a potato that someone sends to me in a photograph. These potatoes came from Cyprus. I went, oh my God, I'm going to fall down, right? We can grow potatoes in buckets, and we're going back to this. I just, I suppose, keeping it, I suppose, as local as you possibly can is literally producing your own food. You cut out the middle, every man and every woman. You have it outside your back door. But the idea is either grow your own or buy it. Whatever you do, add these different types of foods to your diet.
Exactly. And, going back to the organic side of things and growing the community of organic agriculture and regenerative agriculture, the other side, from the farmers obviously producing the food, is the consumers, the demand side, right? And that's why I think it's so important. If you're a consumer who really cares about regenerative farming, sustainable agriculture, improving your local ecosystem and environment, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, bring them a carton of eggs from the farmer down the road that you buy from. And it's that small thing in your community that makes a difference. Because if you touch one person, they go touch somebody else, and it's a chain reaction. And if we're increasing the demand on, just a local level for local regenerative sustainable goods, it's going to make a huge difference across the whole country.
Yeah, I suppose, would you see, I'm going to say, organic and regenerative sometimes either coming up against each other friction-wise?
Yeah, I definitely would. I know farmers who would say that regenerative goes like beyond organic. And there's no like label from the government for what regenerative means or anything like that, unless they just invented one like a week ago. But last time I checked, there wasn't. Whereas organic, you can still use an organic pesticide, right? Under the USDA's rules and regulations, right? You can sell something as organic even if it's been treated. So I think sometimes consumers are misled by that. And that being said, that organic product is probably better than a conventional pesticide. Does that make sense?
There's tiers of it.
Yeah.
And we won't get into the debate. Well, at least there's only two of us here, because I hear people shouting on the line. Regenerative is better. Organic is better. And I'm always going to say, lads, if we can literally marry each other, and I love that quote, right? A rising tide raises all boats, right? We're all trying to do the exact same thing. We're trying to look after the soil. We're trying to feed the people who want to literally eat this type of foods on a more regular basis, that they are happier, that they are healthier, that their skin is glowing, and the idea that the next generation is going to be as healthy as the previous generations. Because right now we have obesity, we have diabetes, we have chronic illnesses, all linked to the likes of foods and what's applied to them. So we're looking to do a little bit less of what we were doing in the last couple of decades and get back to further generations of what they were doing before, how they were producing food and how healthy they were. And that's, I suppose, a whole lifestyle approach to either eating healthy foods and back to single ingredients and literally producing the best foods we possibly can on wherever we're currently living.
Are you sure we don't just need more like pills and medication?
Yeah, there's a couple of doctors might agree with that statement. Oh, holy God.
You're saying lifestyle and fitness?
That's what I
Oh,
said. That's what I said. Right, write it down. You can quote me on that one. Lifestyle foods are literally the game changer, and food is medicine. And if we just got more and more people to actually eat it and see how much better, how much more, I'm going to say energy you would have out the other side of it. That's kind of the key thing in itself.
yeah. And I mean, eat it, grow it if you can. I mean, you go spend an hour or two in the garden, or with some livestock, you just feel better. You feel more whole. You feel more connected. And back to the regenerative and organic thing, you know, labels at the end of the day are just labels. I think the best thing, if you're really into this and really interested, is find a local farmer if you can. Go to a farmer's market. Uh, that I think that's more important. Whether that farmer's organic, regenerative, sustainable, just support the local food system. Support the small guys. Is
Yeah,
what I would say.
so glad you said that because there is a small town and village that literally has a farmer's market close to you once a week, twice a week, every fortnight that you can gain the advantage of. Because people actually don't see about the likes of the pollution that we talk about air miles. Air miles is a massive thing, right? Not only in America, but also across the world. And we touched on it, I suppose, potatoes being shipped in from other countries that literally can grow them literally in the ditch. They grow if you throw them into the ditch. And that's madness. But that's really important. Find a local farmer, support a local farmer, and that's literally going to be one of the simplest ways to you to not only improve the likes of your health, but also the likes of your families and the whole environment in itself. I'd love to ask this big question, or this question in itself, right? Where do you see, I suppose, organics and regenerative farming going in the US in the next 5 to 10 years?
Man, you know, I can't tell the future, but where I would hope it would go and what I think will happen is there will be more organic regenerative producers because you're seeing the demand increase, especially from, I'm in my 20s. You're seeing that demand increase from people in their 20s and people younger. You're having a lot of influencers talk about regenerative farming, talk about, you know, where you get your food from, growing food. You would probably know more about this, but like the macronutrients, the micronutrients that are in your food and the differences that come from where you get it. So I think we're seeing a rise in demand, or which will increase a rise in supply, right? Um,
Yeah, very good. Yeah, there is a new generation, new gen. I don't know what gen we're in now at the minute. That literally, again, that are these health nuts. I'll put myself into that category. That literally want the best foods they possibly can. That exercise 4 and 5 times a week, whether it's home workouts or gym based, and from that they will source out the best food. But sometimes they're lacking in knowledge about where to get it. And I suppose that's something that I would be a firm believer in shouting out loud on social media or in public to literally tell people it's over here or it's here or it's over there. Get it, order it online. And that now that farmers are able to have that option in Ireland anyway, for the most part, being delivered to the likes of your door, whether it's DPD or anything else, that's a huge advantage. And that is something that I would see the future of, I'm going to say, regenerative and organics.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's the young people, but it's also the older people, right? Um, you know, the young people have to come from somewhere, and the moms, the dads, the grandpas, the grandmas are also getting influenced. And I've seen that in my own family. Um, you know, grandma was not going to do a garden this year, and now she did. I'm not saying it was because of me, but I definitely wanted there to be a garden. And wanted to help out with that. And I think like the average age of a farmer in the US right now is like late 50s, which is an insane statistic. So land is going to change hands here in the next 20 to 30 years on a massive scale. And I think what that looks like depends a lot on where we want to go as a society and farming.
Yeah, you're right. It is going to end up being handed over to someone, and hopefully that person is educated in the right way of farming, and that's, I suppose, one of those key principles in itself. Chris, is there anything that we haven't kind of touched on in the likes of this podcast that you would like to mention, whether it's anything from the likes of farm to fork life or any other topic before we kind of wrap it up here?
Yeah, there's one thing that's really been on my mind. So we've been texting back and forth, and you finish some sentences with A1. What does that mean?
funny. A1 is in okay, top notch, top score. That's good in itself would probably be what A1 means in a nutshell. But that's my text talk, and I usually voice note as well. But that's really A1.
I was like, I was gonna Google it, and I'm like, I'm just gonna ask him, but I've never heard this. I guess I'll just plug Farm to Fork one last time and kind of tell your listeners what it's about. If you want to learn more information, you can go to farmtofork.life, or you can go to thefarmersdigest.com. We have a weekly newsletter that's free. We have some free articles, and then we're implementing a paid subscription that's $6.99 a month, and you get access to our whole database of articles. And it's constantly growing. We know we're not perfect, but we're constantly learning, and we hope to take profits and hire more people who know things that we don't know to put more articles out and just grow this huge community where we're all learning together and communicating. So, yeah, I think that's it for me. Do you have any last questions or remarks?
No, I just want to say, Chris, I'm going to say appreciative of the likes of your time in itself. I know you're a busy man and you have more than one job on the go, like myself. But the idea is, I just really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to meet you in person as well. That's gonna
Likewise.
that's it.
Really appreciate you having me on. This has been a great experience. So thank you so much.
You're super welcome. I always end these shows by saying, stay tuned, stay classy, and get on that good stuff.